Welcome back. Be Good to Your Brother number 5.
Number 5, look at us go. We got a month into
A
this.
month in.
Wow. Doing pretty good. As you can see, we got a guest this week, Mr. Andrew Farmer. You want to introduce yourself a little bit to him?
I'm Andrew Farmer. I'm a school teacher. I teach at Madison Southern High School. I taught for 3 years at Estill County High School and had these guys in class.
Yeah.
So I'm really honored to be here, and I'm thankful for the invite. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Yeah. The mic setup's a little odd this week. Hopefully you guys can still pick us up on this one. But that might sound a little weird.
ASMR.
Yeah. Hopefully you guys can still pick us up on him. He's got the main mic. He's got the most things to say here. So, how you been this week, guys? Anybody want to start going?
I've been good. I've got an opportunity to jump on. I'm going to be gone for months. So we're going to figure something out. We may pre-record tomorrow. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know how you feel. We'll figure that out later. But
We can always get the engineer report method going, too.
Yeah, I'm going to be souping. I'll be in North Carolina for a month.
Yep.
Be learning a lot. Be good fun.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully we'll find some room to grow. I don't know. We'll
Yep.
see.
We'll try to get after it anyways. What about you, Andrew? You been all right?
Yeah, it was a good week. We're starting to kind of get back into the flow of school. You know, there for a while, I mean, just the weather was it was rough. I mean, it was inconsistent. We didn't know what we were doing and when we were doing it. But now we've kind of got back into the flow of things, and it's been nice. It's been good. I like consistency. I'm a creature of habit.
Yeah, most definitely. This week it's been kind of slow for me. We've had track practice all week and all that, but Tuesday afternoon there was a staff faculty versus the students game, basketball game, and Micah told me, he said, if you want to play in it, I'm gonna need a sub, so you come play in it, because I was supposed to do the announcing for it. So I show up thinking I was gonna announce, and they're like, there's this kid already sitting there. He said, I thought I was announcing. I said, well, I thought I was announcing. He said, well, I thought you were playing. I said, well, I'll play, and you can sit there and announce. So I went in and played, and we beat the students 22-20, and I hit the game-winning 3
Nice.
Big time.
with like 20 seconds left. It was pretty
Awesome.
cool.
That's awesome.
Braxton Miller dropped like 17 points. I had 3, and Noah Williams had 2. So it was, but they dished it over to me in the corner, and I splashed a 3. That was pretty cool.
That's clutch.
But anywho, that's how my week went. That was probably the highlight of my week, anyways. But we'll get into our topics. What we got written down over there? Anything?
Not much. Just some stuff that's on my mind.
Okay.
I'll let you and Andrew lead.
All right.
Y'all.
So Andrew, he's got a pretty interesting story. He's went through the ringer, as you would say. What was this? 5-6 years ago?
It was 2019.
2019?
Yeah.
So, about coming up on 6 years ago, Andrew got in a real bad car wreck and about killed him. So, we're going to just kind of let you tell that story if you're willing, and we'll try to get some experiences from you. And just whenever you want to start or however you want to start.
Yeah. Well, I guess you have to look at it from a perspective of trauma, right, in your life. And to be honest with you, going into that, I'd never really had a lot of trauma in my life. I've lived a pretty simple life. I've not dealt with a lot of trouble up to that point. And then I had some tough times that I went through. So it was my birthday in 2019. And so I got up, and I had been dating this girl on and off, and that's a whole nother story. I shouldn't have had her in my life, just to be frank with you. She shouldn't have been part of my life. But I had been talking to her for a little while on and off, and she had convinced me that she deserved another chance. And I finally said, okay, And so her gift to me for that birthday, she came over to the house that morning, and she surprised me with a trip to the gorge. We were going to go to the Red River Gorge. And then they had this underground kayaking thing where they had flooded these old mines, and you go on the kayak and you go through. And I'd seen it, and I was really excited. I thought that would be awesome. And so she showed up that morning. She had me an Apple Watch, and she surprised me with that. And she invited my sister and her boyfriend at the time too. So it was going to be the 4 of us. We were going to go and do this. And so we all get in the car. You don't really think of anything. It's a normal day. You do normal things. And we get in the car and we're driving, and it had just kind of rained a little bit, so like the road was like just a little bit slick. And we're going out Spout Springs, and we're going through this corner, and everything's just fine. I can remember it like it was yesterday. Like, I was in charge of the songs. I was playing Alan Jackson. Like, things were good, you know. And I can remember just hearing her scream, and I mean, I can still hear that to this day. Like, I can still hear it. And I had just enough time to look up and see a car just drill us. I mean, drill us. And I've never felt a feeling like that. I've never been hit that hard, right? It's like that dream. I always describe it as a dream. You know, you're dreaming that you're falling, and right before you hit the ground, you wake up. You know, it's like that, except you don't wake up, like you hit it, and you can't. I mean, you can do anything you can to try to stop it, but you can't. And I can remember the taste. Like, it tasted like metal. Like somebody, it just felt like somebody just hit you right in the nose as hard as they could. And I can remember as soon as it happened, you know, I'm sitting there, and as soon as I realized what had happened, I mean, it took me a minute. I was like stunned. And whenever I realized what had happened, I opened the door, and I remember I unbuckled my seatbelt, and I rolled out onto the ground. And I'm like rolling around because I'm in so much pain. Like, it was a different kind of pain, a deep pain. And then after that, I finally realized, I was like, wait a minute, like, there's other people in the car. So I get up and I go in there and I look at her, and she's hollering and screaming and everything, and I'm just like, are you okay? You know, and she's like, you know, I'm okay. And I can remember looking back, and Amelia's boyfriend at the time, he was just going nuts. Like, he was running around screaming, yelling, cussing. Poor old Wes. I mean, he just took off. And I remember I didn't even try to help him. And then I'd look back at my sister, and I was like, are you okay? And she was just out of it. Like, she didn't respond. She wasn't, you know, conscious. And I was like, oh no. And so I went back, and I mean, I'm telling you, I felt like I ripped her door off the hinges. Like, I mean, I was going to get her, and I unbuckled her, and I picked her up, and I laid her down with me on the ground. And I remember I held her hand, and she kind of come in and out, and we just were like, we cried out to the Lord, like, Lord, save us, you know. I mean, it was rough. But we had some really good people that day that came and helped us. The Estill County EMS, I mean, they saved us. You know, like, if it wasn't for them and what they did for us that day, I'm probably not sitting here, you know. They flew Amelia out and her boyfriend at the time. They flew them out to UK. They didn't even waste time. They didn't take them to Markham and Wallace. They took them straight to UK. And they took me to Markham and Wallace, and so we're going there, and me and that girl, we were in the ambulance, and they're taking us, and I can remember the whole thing. There was not one time that I lost consciousness. I can remember every step, everything we did, being in the ambulance. We were in the ambulance, and they were like pricking my toes. They took my socks and my shoes off, and they're like pricking my toes. I'm like, ouch! Like, stop doing that. And they're like, you don't understand. Like, this is great. It's great that you're hurting, because they were afraid that I had, you know, maybe severed my spine or had nerve damage, and so they were like, this is great news. Like, you don't understand. So we get to Markham and Wallace, and it's gross, but they get me. I'm on the stretcher, and they're wheeling me in. I'm like, guys, I'm gonna be sick. Like, and they're like, yeah, that's how you feel after this. Like, you're gonna feel that way. It's normal. I'm like, no, you don't understand. I'm gonna be sick. And about that time, I turned my head, and there's an ambulance, and I'd ate a peanut butter Cliff Bar that morning. And I threw up, and it was projectile all across that ambulance, and I felt so bad. I was like, guys, I'm so sorry, but I was like, I tried to tell you though, you know. And so we get in there, and I'll never forget this too. Like, Parker, I think it was Parker McCreary, was observing a doctor that day in the ER at Markham and Wallace, and when they rolled me in, he was like, "What are you doing? What are you doing, Mr. Farmer?" And I was like, "Yo, man, what's up?" And I don't know if that like ruined his like career in that or what, but I don't think he did anything else in that pathway again after that. But I felt so bad about that. But it was like a different kind of pain, you know, like I just felt that deep inside of me, like something is bad wrong. I'm hurting, you know. And I remember too when we were laying on the ground, I remember I rolled over. I went to roll over and look at Amelia, and my shoulder was like right here, and I was like this is like my word for word was, that's not good. But I had broke my collarbone, and so my shoulder was just moving just everywhere. And when I was in there, I started to curl up when I was in the ER, and I couldn't uncurl. And so eventually they did a couple tests on me, and they were like, "Yeah, this is bad. You need to go on." So they took me in an ambulance, and man, I'm telling you, we were booking it. We got from like Markham and Wallace to UK in like 20 minutes. I mean, we were smoking. I mean, we were getting after it. But I remember I was in the back on that stretcher, and they have like some shock to them. They have some give. And I remember I was in that thing like this the whole way because, I mean, they were rolling. But it turns out, so I had 4 tears in my intestines. It had crushed my cecum, and that's the spot where the small intestine meets the large intestine. It had crushed it. And so that had to come out. They cut that out of me and removed that. They sewed up my intestines on the other spots that they had been torn. I had a broken back. I broke my L3 in my back, fractured that, and then I snapped my collarbone. My collarbone was broke. So those were all my injuries. But when I got there, they put me under. They fixed me up, and then I started my road to recovery. Amelia was the worst out of all of us. Amelia was in really, really bad shape. I remember they were telling us and explaining it to us, the human body holds like 8 units of blood or something like that, and Amelia took 12 that first night because she was bleeding out. So the seatbelt had mangled her neck, and there's a carotid artery runs through your neck, and it had almost bursted. And so like if that had happened, like she was dead. She would have died right there with me on the ground. But what they call it a pseudoaneurysm. So instead of it actually like bursting, it'll like pooch. Mm-hmm. So it almost burst, but it didn't. And so there's like, the doctors are scared to death that her blood pressure is going to, burst that. And so they had her on these like blood thinners and trying to keep her heart rate down and stuff. And so she was bleeding out as fast as they were putting blood in her. So it was just a never-ending cycle. And so that first night, I mean, we didn't know if she was going to live. So that was really traumatic. But she had all sorts of trouble with that. She had a hernia from the front, like around her belly button, all the way around to her back. So her like abdominal wall tore all the way through there. She broke her tailbone. She broke her ribs. And so she was in bad shape. I remember Wes was in bad shape too. He was bleeding internally. I don't think he had any intestinal damage, so he kind of got lucky in regards to that. But they had to cut him open and fix his bleeding within him. And then my ex, now at the time she was my girlfriend, she had a couple bruises. She went to work the next day. It's wild. It's like she's driving and everybody else got hurt except for her. So, I mean, and I'm glad, right? Like, I have no hard feelings. It's like, I'm thankful that she was okay, and that's great, but we still bear those scars today. Like I've had 2 more surgeries past that to help clean up and fix, because there's something about my body where scar tissue grows back better than it should and faster. And so the scar tissue like grew through my intestines. And so I got to a point where like I was eating and it wasn't going through. And so they had to go in. I had emergency surgery on that. They fixed that, or so I thought, but they kind of did malpractice on me, to be honest. You have like a film in your belly. It's called your mesentery, and it holds your intestines in place. And so when I went back and they did that surgery the first time, they forgot to tack down my mesenteric root, is what my second surgeon told me. And so literally, like, it's like a film that holds your intestines in, and so mine's not tacked down, so it's like
sloshing around.
I described it like, I remember I went home and I told my family, I was like, guys, something is wrong, because like I would lay down on my side and it was like a water balloon like was in me. Gosh. It was wild. And so I remember it, like I remember the moment it happened, but it was several months after. I was out running, and I'm trying to get healthy, I'm trying to recover and all this, and it's like it flipped. My intestines flipped on themselves, and when they do that, they kink. Mm-hmm. And so boom, again, I had another bowel obstruction. I had to go back, and they redid it again. Now this second lady, she did a phenomenal job. I mean, she did great. Like, the surgery was smooth. I had very little pain, and it went well. But but it was a mess, just all of it was very, very traumatic. Breaking your back, it's like you don't know if you're going to get to walk again, and stuff like that. And so I can remember the first time that my feet got to touch the floor, and I had to kind of be like, okay, I put my right foot in front of my left foot, and then left in front of right. I had to think through how to walk, and so it's just, all of it was just so traumatic, and it leaves scars, physically and mentally too, right? Like I can still remember all of this. I remember the taste, I remember the smells, I remember just how miserable of a time it was, and that's a big part of my life now. It was a hard time, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I remember that too. I remember where I was when that happened to him. I was in me and Dad, we were in Zaxby's, and I remember getting the call. So that was just, I know for me that was kind of like an experience, a traumatic experience too, because like these guys are my family.
Yeah.
And it was just a scary thing that's a hard thing to get over, and I think you've done a great job.
I tried.
Getting through it.
It's not been easy, But talk about trauma too to people around you. Well, like, word had got back to people in Irvin about what had happened, right? And it had got kind of misconstrued, and it was like there were 4 of them in the car, and 1 of them died. That was the word that got back. Caleb Click told me that.
I remember hearing about that.
One of us died, right? And it was me. That was what a lot of my loved ones have been told, that I had died, right? And so it's like, imagine that, right? Like, Caleb Click tells it really well. It's like, he's like, dude, I thought you were dead. He's like, I'm just breaking down, weeping because you are dead. And it's just like, I think about the trauma I've been through, but you think about that trauma. It's like your best buddy's dead. It's like, oh my gosh, right? But I reckon everybody dropped everything and came over there. I was told there was almost 100 people that had come into that waiting room and had been around there for us that day. So
I remember we got there and it was packed. Like, just the waiting room was packed. And I think I probably waited about an hour or so in the lobby. Came in, but I think my family just came in. We were in there for like 5 minutes, and we had to file the next people in. So there was a lot of support there for sure.
Mm-hmm. My mother talks about the trauma too, because she had it was like really early summer, like school had just let out, and so teachers were still working, and so she goes to work that morning, and I remember she tells it so well. Gosh, it chokes me up, but she went to school that morning and was working, and on lunch break, she was going out of the school and she was going to eat lunch, and the ambulance went by in front of the high school right there, and they were coming to get us. And she tells it, she says that she's like, I had a really bad feeling that day when that happened. And so she went and she ate, and then she got the phone call, she picked up the phone, and she leaves. As she's leaving, I think she said she was at Hardee's or something. As she leaves, she's going back towards the school as she gets the phone call, and the helicopter flew over with Amelia in it. And so you talk about a parent being helpless, right? It's like, you can't do anything, and so she tells that story, man, it gives me chills, because it's like, gosh, what do you do? How do you handle that? It's hard.
Mm-hmm. Well, we talked about it some last week, that trust, just having the trust and stuff in people and things and God, and that's one of them situations you have to. I mean, especially when you're out of control. You can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
You just got to go and do the best you can, and put all your burdens and put all your trust in God.
That's right. That's exactly right. And we sit here and we talk about trauma and how to overcome trauma and how to heal from trauma, and I don't think there's any other way to heal from it than to do that, to be frank with you. I think that's literally the only way to experience healing. That's the only way to go and put these things that have crippled you and hurt you in the past behind you, is giving it to Him, because you can't do anything, right? We're foolish people, We're not very smart when compared to God, and it's like, we need that. We need to give it all to Him. So
I feel like I have nothing of value to add compared to that, because I've never experienced anything like that.
I'm glad.
And I remember hearing about the wreck, and it really threw me off because I heard that you all were going to the gorge, and I love the gorge. I've gone with Dad my whole life, and and then I started dating Raina, and I've taken her and our friends there many a times. Me and Gabe have gone several times, and like every time I go, I think about that as I'm going down Spout Springs.
Dude, I do too. Because I love the gorge too. You know, like you go all the time, and I can every time we go through that curve, I see the spot where me and her laid on the ground, and I think about that. You know, and I just think about how lucky I am. You know, like obviously God wasn't done with me.
Yeah,
He had some sort of plan for me in place to survive that, and so you know here I am today, able to tell the story.
I wanted to touch on that actually because I didn't really know you at the time. I knew of you, and I obviously knew your family, and Gabe was related to you, so I kind of was acquainted with you guys that way. But I remember hearing that, and it tore me up. I was worried about you guys, and I remember hearing about Wes, and I knew Wes in school, and I remember hearing him talk about like how often he had nightmares of just like of him running around on the road screaming because he
took it hard. Yeah.
He had no control. And
yeah, he took it very hard. I'll never forget that because I was just trying to calm him down because, dude, I mean, he's just running. Like, he's just running around screaming. And I'm like, dude, like, you got to relax. Like, you got to chill, you know, just because it was just crazy. I mean,
I bet when that adrenaline wore off, he just like...
Oh, yeah. Well, you got to think, like, I was telling you, I mean, I picked Amelia up.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I've got 4 intestinal tears. I've got a broken collarbone. My back is broken. Yeah. And I pick her up.
It's incredible.
And lay her on the ground. Like, you talk about something that's powerful, adrenaline. I mean, I was juiced. I could have probably ran through a wall that day, you know. Yeah. But when it started to wear off, man, it was just like, it was almost like I curled up in the fetal position, and I couldn't come out of it. You know, it's a wild thing. I'll tell you this too, we avoided some more trauma as well. And I'll never forget this. I don't know why I didn't do it. I like to think I'm a pretty caring person, and I like to look out for others and love others, but for some reason I never thought about the other person, you know? That guy hit us, right? And it's like I took care of all the people in our car, and that was it. Why did I not go and check on the other guy? And I figured it out months later. I was on the EMS, and this was the exact way they described it. They were like, well, it's good you didn't because he was all over the car. It was like a 1999 like Toyota. It was a really old vehicle, and it didn't have very good safety features, and he died on impact, is what they said. So, you know, and I hate that for his family, and I feel so bad for them too, but it's like, man, that's... I avoided some severe trauma. Can you imagine finding that? I would be really scarred by that. It's just weird how the Lord does little things here and there where it's like, man, you just dodged... you know, this, you dodged that. It's like, if I would have seen that, there's no telling how much that would have scarred me, you know, just to have seen something like that. So there's just so many things, little things here and there that you're blessed that it worked out this way, and it worked out okay for you in the long run. And I'm thankful, you know. I think part of the overcoming the trauma process too is like your perspective. You know what I mean? Like I hate how there's a pathway that a lot of people take when something bad happens. It's like, woe is me, you know. Yeah. Let's throw a little pity party. If I'm going to be sad, everybody's going to be sad. Yeah. And it's like, that's a very attractive thought, just to be honest, in the moment, right? When you're in that moment, that's a very attractive thought to be like, yeah, this is how I feel, and I'm going to make everybody else miserable too. But, you know, mindset is a big part of it. And if you have that mindset, like, yes, I'm gonna get over it. I'm not gonna feel sorry for myself. I'm not gonna make other people miserable. That's a big part of overcoming it, I think. And I'm not gonna say that I did perfect with it, because there were some days that, man, I did feel like that. I was like, man, it's just, today's a sad day, and we're all gonna be sad, you know. But for the most part, I tried to stay upbeat and tried to stay positive and find good things about it. You know, I think that helped a lot too.
Yeah.
I was amazed when you came back to school, and like we picked on you for being crippled, and you were in that like full body cast. Up. And
well, you weren't the only one. My dad did too.
I couldn't believe how well you handled it.
I tried, but like I said, I don't take credit for that, right? Like that's the Lord, right? That was me giving it to the Lord and trusting Him that everything was going to be okay. my dad called it a turtle shell.
Yeah.
He'd be like, now put your turtle shell on before you go. He would give me a hard time over it. But yeah, well, and I think my job helped. You know, what's crazy about that is like the day before that happened, I was interviewing for my job at school.
Really?
Right. So like I sit down with like Victoria Barnett and Zach Barnett and all these guys and Josh Yost and everybody, and I'm sitting there interviewing for my job, you know. And so like I remember whenever I got a hold of Mom finally, you know, I'm in the middle of this wreck, this chaos, and I'm like, Mom, you need to tell him that I want that job, because I was supposed to call him back and tell him that day and be like, hey, I want to accept the job, you know. Because I wanted to accept it that day, but I didn't think that would be professional, you know, like be like, yeah, I want it now, like not even think about it. I was like, I gave the business answer. I'm gonna have to go talk to my family about this and consider this, and I'll get back with you, you know. But I'd done that, and then I was also supposed to speak at church that night. It was like a Wednesday night or something, and they'd asked me to speak, and I was like, Mom, you got to tell them I want the job. You got to call the church and tell them I can't talk tonight. Those were the things that I was thinking about. You know, I was like, man, I don't want to, you know, do anybody wrong with that. But they, I remember Mr. Yost and Mr. Saylor came and visited me in the hospital. So I appreciated that, and I appreciated, you know, getting to teach, and I was going to do it one way or another, you know, because I really wanted to start, and I'm really thankful I did, because I had you guys, you know, like that was crazy. That was my first year of teaching, was you all. So it really set put a good taste in my mouth, you know, for what teaching was and how to help kids and how to love kids, because you guys were great. You know, you all were great students. So I'm really thankful it all worked out that way.
The hot dogs, I don't know.
that is another story for another day.
Dale Benton is...
Dale and Andy Dong were some of the biggest characters I've ever had, and probably will ever have, right?
I've never seen anybody get as red as you did when you had to deal with him.
I got upset a couple times.
Deep red in the face.
You know what's crazy, though, is like that was my first year. So it's like, as a teacher, you go in and this is what you experience, and you're like, this is just normal. This is how it is.
I would have quit.
Oh gosh, I could unpack stories about them for days. I could sit here and tell stories about what they did, but it was wild. But yeah, I started off in the back brace. I remember like the first day of teaching, I'm sitting there in a big back brace, and I had a cane, right, and I'm walking around teaching like that. But I was going to do it one way or the other. I mean, it was good for me, you know, because I'd laid in the bed the whole summer, dude. I mean, I wouldn't know how to do anything. With a broke back, you can't get up and put weight on it because you don't want it to hurt it, you know. And that was something I'd always been told, was like, you know, you need to listen to everything the doctors say, because if you don't, it'll impact you down the line somewhere. So I took it very seriously. I mean, the only time I would get up is to use the bathroom or to eat, you know. If I wasn't doing that, I got right back in that bed and I laid down.
Yeah.
And so I had a ton of downtime. I mean, I did nothing pretty much the whole summer. Other than read, study, and talk to people. You know, people came and visited me. That was nice. But I remember I grew an inch. That was wild, right? So it's like I was like 5'10" and 3/4 like my whole life, like for like the first 3 years before that, right? Consistent, boom, 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 boom. And then the next time I went to the doctor, I was like 6 foot tall. Because where I'd laid in the bed, my vertebrae had decompressed in my back, like my discs in my back had decompressed, because I wasn't standing up vertically on them, and so they were like, "You've grown. You're 6 foot tall," and I was like, "No way!" I was like, "I hit the 6 foot mark." So I was like, "Let's go!" You know, like I was hyped about it. But I did that, and then I did a lot of studying too. Like I did some deep thought that summer too, because what are you gonna do? I mean, you're sitting there in the bed, and it's like you can only watch so many movies. You can only you know, do so many things, and so it's like I did some really, really deep thought. And I know you've heard my message on that, right? I found several key points to life just sitting there thinking about all that stuff, right? I think those three were to, you know, get saved by Christ, right? Let Jesus be your Savior, accept Him, right? That's the most important thing. That's where you start, right? Is to have Jesus as your Savior. The other thing was that we need to live our lives for Him. I remember sitting there in the bed thinking, man, I'm so selfish. Like I'm such a selfish person. Like every morning I would wake up and I'd be like, what am I gonna do? How am I gonna do this? You know, and I'll just be honest with you. I mean, I was like 21 years old. I was 21 years old. I was in the best shape of my life. I was like, man, nothing can hurt me. I am bulletproof. you know? And so I was very selfish with that. I did whatever I wanted to. I didn't sit down and think, you know, what does the Lord want me to do? How is God guiding me? And so that was my second point, was like, you need to live your life for Him, right? Because that's the only thing that matters. One of these days, the things that will echo in eternity is what we did for the Lord, how we serve the Lord. And then the last one was to love your family. Like, tell the people that you love them, because you just don't know. Right? That morning, I didn't sit there and think, man, I might lose Amelia on the way. Right? And I didn't sit there and hug her and be like, I love you. I didn't do that, because I was like, well, we'll be all right, you know?
Yeah.
But I make it a point now, like, every time I call somebody in my family or something and I go to hang up, I always tell them I love them. Every time. I do that very, very consistently. Just because you just don't know, man. We're not guaranteed the next moment. I might get in my vehicle and go home today after this. I might not make it home. I might not. I mean, you just don't know, you know? So those were the three biggest things that I collected after that. And I mean, I felt like a philosopher sitting in that bed. I'm sitting there, I'm like, what is the meaning of life, you know?
Aristotle.
Yeah, I was sitting there thinking about all those things, but that was what got me through it. You know, like I know that was a long way back around to the point, but it's like overcoming trauma. It's like those are the things that gets you through. You know, you sit there and you give everything to the Lord. You pursue Him. You love the people that are around you that He's given you, and you keep a positive attitude. And eventually you'll beat it. You know, you'll get through it. And I try to use it for the good now, right? Like, there's been several kids in this county, young men, that have been in car wrecks that have been really bad, right? I'm sure you can think of a couple of them over the past couple of years. And I always make it a point to reach out to them and go talk to them, you know? And gosh, that's hard. I'll be honest with you. There's been times I've went into the hospital and every fiber in my body is like, don't you do it. Do not take a step in here. Because it's traumatic, you know? It's trauma. But I do it anyway. And I talk to these guys and I just try to remember. I'm like, man, I've been there. Like, I know how you feel. I know what it feels like right now. But it's not always going to be like this, right? Mm-hmm. And here's how you beat it. Here's how you overcome it. So I think the good Lord put it in my life for a reason, right? It's like, I can impact others. I can do good for Him by using that trauma. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, I know that just that traumatic experience, I've never had anything as serious as that or as traumatic as that, but just going through, you know, hard times, you said it, staying positive.
Yeah.
That's the best way to get through it. Just any hardship you have, because negativity will just bring you down. I mean, it's just like a spiral. If you're just sitting in it, if you're listening to it, people's always giving it to you, you're always giving it back. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's just a spiral, and you're just going to go out of control, and it'll just bring you down ultimately.
It's hard not to go down that spiral.
Yeah.
It's like, even with little stuff, like if you miss the gym one day, then people are like, well, screw it. I'll as well just not go tomorrow. Just take another rest day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like, I know that's a very minor comparison, but to apply it to something daily.
Well, we all go through hard times, you know. Like, it's not like I'm special because I had a car wreck. You know, it's like everybody has hard days. Everybody has hard seasons in life, you know, regardless of who you are. And so those are good lessons to apply to everything. You know, I mean, they apply for any situation and scenario.
Well, you talked about you were sitting in that bed and you were thinking about, well, what is life? These are my three purposes that I need to have. Mm-hmm. And so how did you apply those into your recovery process?
Well, I mean, it was like you guys talk about core values all the time, right? It's like these are who you are, you know, and it's like whenever you figure stuff out like that, you have to let that define you. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, everything that I do, I have to figure out. Like, I would sit there and I'd be like, why am I doing this? Is this for Andrew's glory or is this for God's glory? You know, is this actually helping someone, or am I just helping myself? You know, am I actually loving the people that God has put in my life? Am I doing that, right? Like, those are things that drive me and I have to think about every day. And that's really what led to my profession too, right? Like, my profession really helps with that. Like, as a teacher, and then I was a youth minister for 4.5 years. And so it's like every day, like, I was helping somebody in some way. Mm-hmm. And that makes life worth living. You know, like, these people that go and they work these jobs and they show up from 9 to 5 and they don't help anybody, they don't interact with anybody, and then they go home. Like, I would have a hard time doing that, just to be frank with you. Like, everything I do, I want it to have some sort of purpose and some sort of higher meaning of I am helping someone, I am serving the Lord, I am loving someone. Like, that helps, you know. But I think that those principles and those values, you need to apply them to yourself. And from the top to the bottom, right? It's like everything I do flows through these things. And that's what I did. Like, that's what I tried to do. I'm not perfect, obviously. Sometimes I'm selfish, but for the most part, I've tried to apply that to everything that I've done. And it helps you live a meaningful life, you know?
Yeah.
Like, there's not one day that I wake up and I go to Madison Southern to teach kids that I'm like, man, I hate my job. You know, I don't do that. I'm like, man, this is great. Like, I get to impact young people. I get to love young people and, you know, and help them. Because I've been in their shoes. You know how hard high school is at times. You know, like, you're growing up, you're trying to figure out who you are and what to do. And, you know, I get to help kids every day with that. So it's pretty nice.
You had a big impact on me personally. And like I said earlier, I didn't really know you. I knew of you. But you started teaching, and I was in one of your first classes, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, you are.
And like, you had a really big impact on me. That was a tough time for me, just mentally, because I talked about this in the first episode. Like, I always had it was kind of a BS plan of just like a pre-thought out answer. Like, somebody asked me what I wanted to do with my life. I wanted to be an engineer, and I wanted to work for the government, so I had good benefits. And that was just like, it worked for like when I was 12, and then I got
Sounds
older,
good at that point,
and
right?
I was like, I actually have to have a plan now, and I just have this BS answer that I told everybody, and but I felt like I was so far behind in like junior and senior year in high school, and I don't think I was. I think I was where I needed to be, and I don't think that drive is a bad thing, but it was a weird place to be stuck, and that was really hard on me to just like almost like I had to just wait until I was ready to move forward.
Sure.
And that was hard on me because like I was constantly just feeling like I wasn't doing enough. And in archery, whenever you did archery, I had a really rough time in archery. Like, I just, like, every day I was mad all the time. And I really tried to contain it, but I was just mad so often.
Yeah.
And you were really good for me then. You were a really good role model, and you gave me some tough love at one point, and it kind of set me straight. I figured a lot more out later, but
yeah, we need a little tough love every now and then, don't we?
we do. Yeah, kind of like throwing a rock off the bridge.
That's right. That's right. So I'll never forget that. I mean, you know, in the moment, I'm like, what the heck, Dad? Like, don't whip me in front of everybody, you know? But it's like, dude, I needed that.
Yeah.
Sometimes you need a good tail whipping, just to be honest with you. I mean, it's good for you. I never got a whipping growing up that I didn't deserve. I deserved every one of them.
Yeah.
And I probably deserved more, to be honest with you.
I think I did too.
But I mean, they're good for you, you know? It's good. It's good to get that discipline. I love discipline. Like, the older I get, the more I'm like, man, if you're disciplined, like, it sets a lot of things straight in your life. Yeah, I'm glad it did, you know, because that was another reason I went into teaching was like, I had Corey Stringfield when I was in high school, and I know you all probably don't know him, but he was my biology teacher, and like, I thought that he was like the man. Like, he was a role model. Like, he was always calm, cool, and collected. He was organized. He was smart. He showed up. You know, he took care of us, you know, and I loved that. I was like, man, I want to be that guy. Like, I want to do that, you know, and he coached archery too, you know. Really? So he got the program started there. Yeah, it is funny. What's even funnier is how many times I've replaced him, right? I always tell everybody I'm Dollar General brand Corey Stringfield. Right, because like, so he was at Estill for several years, and then so he gets a job back home in Madison Southern because that's like, he went to school there, he grew up there, that's his home, you know, that was his big job. So he goes and teaches bio there, and they had one guy at Estill that 1 year, just as kind of like a bridge, and then I graduated and they hired me, so I replaced him there once. I taught at Estill for 3 years, and then he called me that summer after the third year and was like, hey, like, they've hired me as assistant principal at Madison Southern, and we need a biology teacher. You know, how do you feel about that? And I was like, well, you know, now that you say that, you know, I'm interested. And so I replaced him again. I've replaced him twice now.
It's really interesting.
But I'm telling you, he was my role model. Like, a big reason I went into teaching biology was because of him. You know, he had a big influence on me, and so you just and I bet he didn't know that. I bet he didn't know that at the time. You know, like I don't sit there and think Gabe really looks up to me. You know, you don't think that in the moment. You know what I mean? You're just doing what you think is best for that kid.
Yeah.
You know, but I'm sure he didn't realize that. But I've told him after several years, I told him, I was like, man, you were it for me. Like I looked up to you. I thought you were awesome. And then I went and I took over the archery. You know, and that was something that was special too. Like I'm not gonna lie to you, I didn't want to do it. I mean, I did not want to do archery. I had no plans of being an archery coach, you know, but there was a desire for it. There were several people that wanted to do it, and I loved you all. Just to be frank with you, I thought you all were awesome kids, you know. Mm-hmm. So I was like, let's do it. Like let's do this thing. And I had no idea what I was doing, you know. I had to figure it all out. I had to learn, and it was hard, but I wouldn't trade those memories for anything. I have a picture of you seniors all around the target. It was on picture day. Yeah. You're all standing there around that, and I look at that every now and then, and I'm like, man, those were good times. You know, like, that was fun. You know, I loved that. I enjoyed you all. So
going to the first ever Texas Roadhouse in Indiana. Why is it in Indiana?
We made somebody cry.
Look at that. It was our waitress. She cried, didn't she? I'll never forget. She
cried because we all tipped on card. She didn't look at it. That was good times. Raina got like catcalled by I don't even know what.
Did we go to the zoo? I think
we went to the zoo.
Went to the zoo too, didn't we? Why did we go to the zoo? You know what I'm saying? Like that's.
I think we just had the opportunity.
You know, it's like, all right, we're going to the zoo. You know, it's like, all right, that's me right there. Like that I think that defines me. I'm like, yeah, let's go to the zoo.
Took the archery team to the first Texas Roadhouse
and Josh.
The zoo.
And Josh.
Yeah, Josh just showed up, right? Josh just came with us. Like,
it's such a wild time.
I love that though. I live for stuff like that because I know that you guys remember stuff like that. And you're like, man, that was awesome. You remember that, you know? So.
Oh, that trip to Texas Roadhouse, we were all dressed up, had suits on.
I made you wear a tie.
I was wearing shorts and a dress shirt at one point because I changed.
That's awesome.
We went to Krispy Kreme.
That's awesome.
Yep.
It was good times.
Then that next year, we went to. You weren't there because your stomach blew up or something.
I got sick. Yeah, that was the first bowel obstruction. Yeah, I'd been playing this. I set all this stuff up for you all, and I was like, all right, you know, we're gonna have a great time, and it happened. I remember. You know what's wild? I don't mean to interrupt you, but you know what's wild is Raina. So we went to whatever the place is called, the archery place in Richmond. Out there, in range archery. Yeah, we went there.
Great place.
And I was like sick. Like it was like a little bit before it actually hit me, and so like I was having this trouble, like, but it hadn't fully blocked off yet. But I was like partial bowel blockage, and I remember Raina. I'm out in the parking lot, and I'm like, I feel like garbage. And Raina's like, you look awful. And I'm like, well, gee, thanks, Raina. But like Raina was like, you probably ought to like go to the hospital, like and see a doctor. And I was
tells me that all the time.
I was like, Raina, I'll be okay. I'm fine. And I wasn't fine. Raina knew. You know, Raina knew something was wrong. But I love that memory of Raina. That's funny.
She's all right.
Raina's a good girl.
I don't care what nobody says.
But then Mom, Dad, and Jill Goosey took over the team that weekend.
Dude, we shot from 10 meters. The final round from 10 meters. Like literally the last round of state. And I shoot my first 4 arrows. And I go pick up my last arrow. And I draw back. And like the rest and something else in my bow broke. And so then I was like, I remember this. Put my arrow, put my bow on my toe, and then I was just like, and Jill walks up, she's like, what's wrong? And I was like, I don't know, Jill. And like, you know, you hear the, and there's so many people shooting, so you, there's
stopped.
me.
You were left at the line.
One arrow. I'm the last person to shoot in the last round, and my last arrow, my bow breaks.
And so Jill, you stood there for a while.
I stood there. It was like 10 minutes. I stood there because Jill has my bow, and she's just walking around looking for anybody willing to help her because she didn't know it. Like she didn't know. Oh, gosh. And I was like, so my wrist is broken, and usually it just falls out.
Yeah.
And then I can stick it back on there, and I'm good.
Right.
It broke. And so this other coach, I can't remember where from, but he helps her and he fixes my bow. And like 15 minutes later, from the time that my bow broke, she gets my bow back to me. And I'm like, oh my gosh, there's so many people watching.
Everybody's
me.
watching you.
Everybody's
I
watching.
remember me and Caleb were sitting right there laughing.
And I kid you not, I draw back, and I'm like, I'm shaking, so I'm like moving all over the target. And then I was like, I just got it somewhere, and I went, 10. And I was like, that'll never happen again.
Like clutching up, right? It's
Never
like,
happen again, but I'm glad it did.
that's awesome.
Glad I didn't miss the target.
Oh, that was funny.
Crazy.
I wish I could have been there.
Those were good times.
Yeah.
I remember you tore up because you weren't there.
I was upset, right? Like when you're in charge of something and you're in charge of people and you can't do your duty, like it's out of your hands, it's like, man, that sucks. Like that's hard, And again, because like I loved you guys, you know what I mean? Like I wanted to be around you. I wanted to help you. I wanted to be there for you, and I couldn't, so it stunk. But I'm glad y'all had fun. I'm glad it still happened. Thankful that
I didn't think it was.
Jill and Matt Hall and everybody like stepped up and helped out,
Yeah.
make it happen.
Good times. But, yeah, we still got a little bit. We had another question, or another topic. This one's from Caleb Knopp. He texted it to me the other day. He's like, you guys talk about sad stuff all the time. Why don't you talk about stuff that's kind of like uplifting and stuff? So I'm like, well, I'll ask you this question. So you went through this hard time, this traumatic time. Mm-hmm. How did you find happiness out of it?
Ooh, that's a good question. Some days it was hard, but I always try to think like, and this is like, you go back to core values and stuff, right? It's like, so when I was young, I always noticed that when I was the most sad was when I was focused on myself, right? So it's like when I would get down, I would always sit there and think, the problem is you're looking at yourself instead of looking around at everybody else. Mm-hmm. And so one thing I always tried to do is when I was feeling down, I would always try to help somebody else and make somebody else happy. And when you see that happiness in somebody else and know you've made a difference, it'll bring you out of the funk, Mm-hmm. It's a really good feeling. So I think that's how I tried to. I'd always try to help somebody else.
Mm-hmm. That's a good answer. I like that because if you're always helping somebody, like we were talking about, hanging around negativity, you're going to be negative. You hang around positivity, you're going to be positive. So if you're always in that mood, always looking for it,
Well, and there's something to be said about like helping someone else and making their day. You know what I mean? Like it's almost like at Christmas time. You know what I mean? Like it's like you always say you love getting the gifts, and you're like, man, I can't wait to get these gifts. But as you get older and you start giving gifts to people, it's like, wow.
That's real fun.
It's like, wow, that's awesome. Whenever like my wife opens up a present and her face lights up because I've got her, what she wanted, it's like, that's awesome. That's a good feeling. But I think that's true with everything. It's like if I make somebody's day or I help somebody along the way and I know that I've made a positive impact on them, like it's hard to be sad. Yeah. It's hard to be sad when you're looking around being like, man, I'm helping people. Like I'm making people's lives better. So that's what I would say to Caleb.
Mm-hmm. That was a good question Caleb had.
Yeah.
You got a question? You want me to
Well, I can relate to that.
Relate to that?
I can relate to that a little bit. Just back to the kind of self-improvement and kind of apply that. Whenever you're doing your best in whatever you do is whenever you're focused on your end goal. I think it's always like it's so easy to make decisions whenever you're focused on the end goal. As soon as you stop thinking about that end goal, like if your goal is to weight loss, like that's what I'm working on right now. My goal is weight loss. Anytime I'm not thinking about that, it's real easy to slip up and eat something I shouldn't that could throw off my calories for the day. Mm-hmm. Like if I'm thinking about that end goal though, it's easy to make the decision to eat the better food. And another thing I've noticed a lot is like I constantly think about God now, and like my social media is just like flooded with God and outreach and like
awesome.
Cliff Connectley, I think is how you say his last name.
Love that guy.
And his son Stuart and George Janko and like all of those guys.
Yeah.
That's like all my TikTok is right now, and I've loved it. I've never felt that connected with God.
Yeah.
And it's just like like I'll catch myself thinking about it, and it's not even. It just makes everything easier. I guess I don't really know where I'm going with that. But.
Well, like, that's interesting you say that, like, because I had a conversation with somebody the other day who's struggling with certain things, right? And I was comparing it to like wolves or a beast that lives within you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What you feed will grow, right? So you've got this love for the Lord in your heart, right? Well, if you feed it, it'll grow, and if you keep feeding it, it'll grow and grow and grow until eventually you look up and you're like, man, everything I do is for the Lord.
Yeah.
Right? Whether I pick up my phone, whether I'm going out into public, whether I'm, talking to my fiance in your case, it's like everything I'm doing, I'm focused on him and he's flowing through me. And it's pretty awesome, to be honest with you, whenever you look at it like that. And the opposite is true too, right? So like, let's say that I've got the Lord in my heart and I starve him and I don't ever feed him. You know what he does? Just shrinks and shrinks until you get to a point where you look up and you're like, dude, I went to church on Sunday, and then I'm going to church today, and it's like, I've not thought about God once. He's not crossed my mind one time,
Yeah.
You have to be careful what you feed in your lives, That's what that reminded me of, though. I had that conversation this week, and I think that's cool that you do that, right? Keep feeding him.
I like that.
Keep feeding it, because it'll grow if you do.
Yeah.
And if you don't feed it, it'll starve, and it'll die, so.
Well, I got one more question for you. It was actually a question you brought up.
Yeah.
He straw man himself.
Do what?
Straw man himself. Set it up.
Oh,
Nah.
yeah. But
I was ready.
I was running the other night, and you were texting me about it. We were trying to plan this stuff and plan this setup, and you're like, "Here's a good topic: how to be a man." I'm like, "That is a great topic." I know we're running out of time here. You got to go in a few minutes.
We got a little bit.
But if you would want to hit on that a little bit, just throughout your experiences and stuff, how do you be a man?
Can I hit play the Uno reverse card here?
Yeah.
Like, I want to know what you all think, because I've found my core value. You know what I mean? Like I've thought of this and I've established to me what it means to be a man. But what do you think? Like, I want to hear from you all.
You got an answer?
What
You got an answer?
What does it mean to be a man?
I think there's a whole lot of ways to define a man, and not in like a. That was a bad word. But
I get it.
there's a whole lot of ways to be a man, I think, and the easiest way I can think of it is you become a man when somebody depends on you.
Ooh. Okay.
Like the day that somebody starts to depend on you for something is probably the day that you become a man.
That's a really good answer. That's solid. I like that.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess it's my turn to answer this now.
What do you think?
What does it mean to be a man?
What does it mean to be a man?
We could talk about this for like a month.
I like how you said how people depend on you. How people depend on you. I feel like responsibility has a lot to do with it.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Once you have certain responsibilities, either to yourself or to other people, and you have to start acting on those responsibilities, I think that's a good indicator of when it is to be a man, but how to continue being a good man, continue growing. It's just that constant discipline in yourself, from staying on the right path and not straying too far left or right from the straight and narrow type deal, and always being dependable, always being responsible in your actions, and always trying to make the right choices and always trying to better yourself. I think those are good characteristics of a good man.
Those are good characteristics. Yeah. So I asked this question a couple years ago to myself, because I was like, dude, what does it mean to be a man? Like, seriously, especially in our confused world today, right? Our world is very confused.
Yeah.
And like oftentimes, I started with scripture. I was like, all right, well, let's see what the Bible says, right? And do you know why Adam was put in the garden? Do you know what God intended for him to do? What was God's plan for putting Adam in the garden? What did he want Adam to do?
Just
Well, you got this huge garden, right?
Yeah, take care of it.
And it's to take care of it, right?
Blank.
It's to take care of it. Let me read that for you. I got Genesis 2:15 pulled up right here. It says, the Lord God took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to work it and to take care of it, right?
Yeah.
So literally God makes the first man ever, and he puts him in the garden, and he says, your job is to work here and to take care of it. And so for me, if I'm looking at what God originally intended for men to be, you're a caretaker. That is your job, is to be a caretaker. And I think you were kind of starting to hit on it, right? Because you said being responsible for someone else, right? Yeah, that's what a caretaker is, right? A man is somebody who takes care of the people who are around him, who goes out of his way to make sure that they're safe, they're fed, they're protected, they're loved. I mean, that's what a man does, in my opinion, right? And I think that's what's wrong with our world today. Just to be blunt with you, I think that there's a lot of boys and there's not many men. Because it takes a selfless person to be a man, right? Like a selfish person, a boy, if you will, is somebody who's like, what do I need to do today? What do I want to do? I want to take care of myself, put my needs first. Whereas a man says, how am I going to take care of my wife? How am I going to take care of my kids? How am I going to take care of my friends? You're a caretaker. And I think that that's what truly being a man at the core of everything is. You are a caretaker. And I see that in the men in my life, you know, like I've got people that God has put in my life that are good men, and they do that. Mm-hmm. They always take care of their wife. They always take care of their kids. They always take care of their family. They put them first above themselves, whether it's working long hours, you know, going outside and working and doing stuff that they don't really want to do, getting up off the couch and getting after it and doing stuff like that's what it means to be a man, in my opinion. And again, our world is very confused on that, right? Because how many guys do you know that are lazy and sorry and selfish? Yeah. Right? It's easy to do. It's really easy in our selfish world to do that, but that's what it really means to be a man, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. That's a good answer.
That's really
a really good answer.
It's kind of funny. I've wrote these notes down. I started writing these on the 9th. And I've come in here, I've had this out, I leave it up here, and I keep a notebook in my center console and a pen, and if I have a thought while I'm on the interstate going to work, I'll pull over and I'll write it down, because I'll forget about it if I don't.
That's awesome.
But these are some thoughts I've had throughout the week, and I should have prepared and had the scripture for it, but I don't. But the Bible tells us that a righteous man falls 7 times. I really like that, because that's just moving forward, getting back up, and like you have to fail to succeed, kind of. And I had a thought, and it's just a thought, and that God wants young people right now. I think that's something God needs. I think God needs for more young people to come to Him.
Sure.
And I felt like that's what I need to do. And so I've been challenging myself at work some. I work with a lot of young guys. And me and a coworker have actually talked a lot yesterday about God and His spirituality. And he's like, I moved away from it whenever I was a kid, and I don't know how to get back now.
It's a common thing. You see that a lot.
I did it too. And I told him, I was like, buddy, I wish that I had the faith that I had when I was like 9 years old.
Faith of a child.
Because it was there. And
Isn't that wild? Isn't that wild? Because, like, you think about Jesus, too, right? Like, you remember the story of Jesus letting the little children come to Him?
No, I don't.
Right? Okay, so there's a scenario in the New Testament where Jesus is out and about, and all of these people are sending their kids. They're like, go to Jesus. And they're coming to Jesus, and the disciples are like, get out of here, right? Because, like, children were, like, viewed negatively in the old times. As a nuisance, as like a pest, and so the disciples are like, "Get out of here, kids! Like, don't come around Jesus, right?" And Jesus is like, "No, let the little ones come to me, right?" And He uses it as a moment of teaching. He's like, "Unless your faith is like one of these little ones, you will not inherit the kingdom of God." Isn't that wild? Just the faith of a child. Think about you as a child, right? You were like, "God is God. I love Him. No questions asked," right? Yeah. And then as you grow up, it's like sometimes people wander off from that and they forget that.
Wow.
You notice a lot of times in the New Testament, the disciples are like, Jesus, why are you doing this this way?
All the
They're
time.
always
It's like every time.
They're like questioning him. It's like,
Jesus, what are you doing, bro? Jesus, why are we out in the middle of a boat and there's a hurricane? What are we doing, Jesus?
Why are we in this boat?
Why are we here, bro? Like, what are we doing?
And you want me to get out?
Yeah. It's wild. That's cool though. I love that. I love that so much because it's like that is us.
yeah,
You know, that is me and you. Every day. There are things that happen. I'm like, God, what are we doing here?
yeah.
God, why has this happened? You know, but it's like, dude, just trust me. I got this. I know what's going on. You know. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh, you're fine.
Faith of a child, man.
And another thing that Dad talks about, I really need to just. Dad needs to fly in every weekend and take my spot. It's like all I talk about is stuff that Dad's talked about, and he is very against the thought of a self-made man.
Okay.
Like even he hasn't even talked about it as much in a spiritual sense, but just like it's real easy to get caught in the train of thought. Like, I brought myself here. I've pulled myself to this point. I've pulled myself out of this hardship, and you really did.
That's interesting you say that because like there are so many like rappers and like guys. I'm about to pee my pants, dude.
We can take a pee break.
Oh, is that okay?
Yeah,
Is that okay, dude? I'm about
take
to
a
buzz. All right. I'm just like my bladder's hurting right now.
It's the open door.
Okay. All right. You were talking about self-made man. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And but that's a big thing Dad's on, which is really interesting, because his family wasn't well off whenever he was young, and his dad tried his best. He always did. He's still working like years after he retired, and it's hard to slow him down. Like, he retired, and I kid you not, I watched him go down that hill. He dug a hole and put bricks in it, covered it back up with dirt, and I still don't know why. I think it was just to have something to do.
Yeah.
And
Something to do.
but Dad really, I don't want to contradict myself, but he really made something of his life, and like, he got a really awesome job in Colorado and moved his family there, except for the two kids he didn't like as much. He left them here in Kentucky
As one does.
to stay in the hills like good Appalachians. But
What is his point, like, because he doesn't think that anybody can just do it alone? You have to have help from
yeah,
people.
everybody has help, even if you don't know it. Like, there's divine intervention, and I really, doing this podcast has made my faith grow so much, because I'll have thoughts like this and I'll write them down, and then like Gabe will bring something that I haven't even thought of to talk about, and we'll start talking about that, and I'm like, well, that's funny because God told me this week. And like I you hear people say that God tells them stuff, and like I always struggle with that, because I was like, I don't think God's ever told me anything. like he don't talk to me.
That's yeah. He's not gonna like whisper in your ear.
Yeah,
AJ,
but
let me
now-
tell you something, buddy.
Like, I write stuff down, and then we talk about it, and I'm like, okay.
He is.
Like, Gabe brought that up, and we haven't seen each other in a week. Like, God really put that there, and I cannot ignore it. I have a responsibility to talk about that now.
He works in mysterious ways.
So whether it's God or, I mean, I have a coworker whose dad isn't in their life, and I was talking about the self-made man thing, because I talked to Dad recently, and he kind of talked about it, and I was just really thinking about it that whole week, and this coworker got like really upset. He was like, well, I didn't have my dad, I had nobody, I brought myself here. And I was like, man, I know you get, like, it's easy to feel that way. And he's like, but there's got to be somebody in your life that's poured something out for you.
Absolutely.
And he's not really a coworker, but he got his job through family, and like he's good at it. It's not like he doesn't deserve the job or anything, but like you've always got help from somebody.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I hate. There's so many rappers that brag about that, don't they? You know what I mean? Like that's all me, stayed true, that's all me, all me for real. It's like, when I hear stuff like that, dude, I cringe. I'm like, no.
not.
I'm like, you don't understand, dude. Like, the reason that you have millions of dollars, I mean, it's not because you're just the best thing ever. You know, like, somebody has helped you along the way. The Lord has blessed you to be in the position that you're in. He has some sort of plan for you to have so much success and have this platform. And it's like, you're probably not even using it, just to be honest, right? Like, there's always somebody that you can thank that helped you along the way. I hate that thought, though. Like, oh, I did this. It's all me. Like, no, come on. I like that. I like that you said that.
Mm-hmm. Well, you got any other topics?
Oh, not really. You had your scripture there.
Yeah, we can get into our scripture.
Okay.
We've had, I think, good conversation today. I really do.
Yeah, nobody's going to listen after this. Every time we don't have Andrew.
But what I noticed when you were telling your story, we're in 1 Corinthians 10, 31 through 32. Whenever you were telling your story, you're like, well, how can I glorify God through this? And I was supposed to talk at FCA yesterday at the high school, but they canceled it. And I was thinking, like, well, you know, Fellowship of Christian Athletes, what do athletes do? They're always seen, they're always in the public eye. And how can they glorify God? And I was just kind of thinking about that. And that brought me to 1 Corinthians 10, 31 and 32. It says, so whether you eat or drink, whatever you do it all for the glory of God. Do not cause anyone to stumble, whether Jews, Greeks, or the church of God. So, whatever you do it for the glory of God, and don't cause people to stumble away from God. So, I was just kind of thinking about that and how I was going to relate it to the athletes and stuff. It's like, well, you always see people scoring the touchdown, they do this number, point to the sky and stuff. But how often are we abiding by that verse? How often are we always going out of our way to glorify God? For me, it's not as much as it needs to be. And I feel like it's that way for a lot of people. And like how you were saying, like the self-made man or whatever, just kind of doing things just doing stuff by yourself and not really taking help from anybody or acknowledging help from anybody. And I just feel like we're often people that do that a lot, and we often don't glorify God. And like we've been reading through the New Testament, and I was going to bring this up yesterday too. We've been reading through the New Testament at church on our Wednesday night groups, and Paul or whoever's writing the letter, or John in Revelation, whoever writes the letter, they start off with like a big paragraph, a big love letter almost to God, basically. They just start off just praising God, glorifying God. Then they get into it. That's the first thing they do. And they also close out the letter glorifying God. I mean, it's the first and the last thing they do every time. Every time they're writing, they're always glorifying God. And I think that's a great example for us to follow. And like you were saying with like through your trauma or what your values, you said, well, what am I going to do today to glorify God? I'm not just going to do this for me. I'm going to do this for God. How it's just implementing that into our lives and actually doing it. Because we can sit here and talk about it all day. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. But actually going out and implementing it is what I think we really need to strive for as people, as men. Actually going out and glorifying God. And the second verse there, not causing people to stumble, I think that's just being a good influence on people, not bringing other people down. Because if someone comes to you and they're struggling with a thing, say they're struggling drinking or whatever, and they come to you and you go around, it's like you go out eat with them and you order a beer and they're sitting there like, man, I'm trying not to do this.
I'm trying not to drink and you're ordering beer in front
of
me.
It's like just things like that. But that's not just for that case of beer or drinking or whatever. I mean, that's anything. That's any.
100%.
Say someone's struggling, with their diet, and you go over there and eating a big bowl of ice cream from top deal. But it also goes with things. It's like, well, if you're wanting to help, if you're wanting to get in shape, well, let me go work out with you. Type deal. You're not wanting to struggle and bring people down. Don't cause people to stumble. Build people up around you. And you notice he said, whether Jews, Greeks, or the Church of God. I mean, he's talking about everybody here. He's not just talking about your friends. He's not just talking about people like faith of you. He's talking about everybody. And don't cause anyone to stumble. So be that good building block, be that good influence for everybody. So I really liked that verse this week, and I felt like it related to what we were talking about a little bit.
Sometimes it also, not causing people to stumble is also like, as dumb as it sounds to say, is not intentionally putting somebody else down so you look better. I remember it was last summer, I did this job at Toyota, and it was like my whole crew was there. And one of my coworkers, me and him had the same task. And so we're going around doing this task, and then the other crew was doing the other half, basically. And we were outpacing them. And I was like, let's, because we got like halfway done, and they were still a quarter of the way done. And I was like, well, let's help them get to where we are, and then we'll jump over to the other side and just repeat. And he was like, "No, let's make them look bad. Let's make them look like idiots. We'll outwork them, and our boss will see that." And at first, I was like, "Yes, let's go.
Put them down."
And then we start working, and I was like, "Why did I want that? Like, there is no reason. It does no good for my crew to struggle.
Yeah.
If I'm winning, like that doesn't even." It doesn't even make sense.
Yeah.
And so, like, as soon as I realized this, I quit what I was doing. I told the guy, I was like, listen, you can do this. I'm going to go help them. And I actually got recognized because I quit doing that, and I helped them. Doing the right thing pays off. And, like, not causing people to stumble is sometimes literally just not putting people down. Because you have a chance to all the time. It's really easy to beat people.
Yeah.
Right now.
Isn't that wild how Christ basically just, any conventional worldly wisdom, Jesus says do the opposite.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because it's like, the world says take care of yourself. Be the best. Make everybody else look bad. Watch out for you and you alone. And Jesus is like, no. Like, you think about everybody else. You take care of your brother, right? Be good to your brother, right? And everything will be okay. And put yourself last. Jesus says the first will be last and the last will be first when his kingdom comes. And that goes against all of the conventional worldly wisdom out there, But that was what Jesus did, right?
Yeah.
He came down and he flipped the world upside down with the things he taught and the way that he lived.
Alrighty. I know you got to go, don't you?
No.
No.
Well, soon, but
Soon?
I've got something else to worry about.
Okay.
That's all right.
All right. I don't have anything else. You
I
got
think
anything
we're
else?
good. Andrew, you got anything else to
Any
add?
closing
I feel like I've
remarks?
talked most of the time.
Yeah.
Well, that was the goal.
I really thank you for the opportunity.
I appreciate you for
It's
coming.
been nice. I like to surround myself with good people, and I feel like I have today. So thank you all for the opportunity.
And I want to say it again. You've been a great impact on my life. I appreciate everything you've done for me.
Yes, sir.
Even if you didn't know you did it.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, we love you. We thank you for being on.
Jesus loves you.
Yep. Well, we're going to get a little outro song in, and
Love the live guitar.
we'll close her out. Yeah, it is fun playing. Episode 5, that's a wrap.
Bye, guys.
We love you. Jesus loves you. Be good to your brother.